Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. When was the last time you had a civilized conversation about race, religion, politics, LGBTQ rights, immigration? Were you able to freely express your opinion without fear of retribution, without someone yelling at you or calling you names because of your beliefs? Sadly, the norm seems to be to rant and rave at others who don't agree with us. What has happened to our humanity? Up next on Another View, we talk with Adina Brown, author of Make Humanity Great Again. Stay tuned for ways we can bring civility back one conversation at a time. But first, it's time for our Another View listeners to show your support for this program. Let's go to Pledge Central with Sandra Woodward and Dan Cawley. Hello.
Hello, Barbara. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys, and I understand we've got a $2,000 match,
You
which
understand
means
correctly. That means we've got a dollar for dollar match happening right now, so your money counts double for the next hour.
So call in Another View listeners. Where do they call, guys?
889-9476 is the number. Certainly we must all know by now. If not, write it down. 757-889-9476, WHRV.org. If you're listening there right now anyway, you'll notice a little red button up in the right-hand corner that says Support Now. Click on that thing, and you are on your way to supporting Another View and all the other great programs we bring you here on WHRV, but especially getting in on that $2,000 challenge. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but double 2,000 is 4? Am I right about that?
Amen.
Absolutely right. And I just heard a ding ding.
Yeah.
Which means we've just doubled whatever that person contributed to support this show. The problem I have, though, is I have no idea what to say.
You have no idea what to say.
No, Barbara, you said I can't rant and rave, and that's my go-to move.
It's true.
That's all
Anybody
I do.
knows Dan knows that's what he is all about. The
Sometimes I'll
raving.
rant but not rave. Sometimes I'll rave and hold the rant.
And hold the rant.
But then I got nothing. So I'm really looking forward to listening in for the next hour.
And here's the thing. We know people, and as Dan and I have partnered up on Pledge Friday so many times, the phones tend to be quiet while Barbara's talking to her guests because everybody's listening. They don't want to miss a single moment. So right
call
now,
now,
while Dan and I are yakking at you, this is a great time to make that pledge of support to Another View. It's 757-889-9476.
Or point, click, and contribute. And then we hear the ping. And if you call, hopefully we'll hear the ring. And we'll know that we've got the money to match it
The cha-ching?
right now.
Is that where you were going with that?
Well, that's the Raymond thing I don't want to do. But that's the idea.
That's all Jay said every
it's
time
Jay
while we were
Sennett.
pledging the other day.
RJ Sennett. 757-889-9476. It is Pet Pledge Friday. We have $28,446 to go. And as soon as we get to zero, we are done with our winter membership drive. So if you've been waiting for the last hours, they are here. They are upon us. And this is a great time to make that pledge, especially if you are a fan of Another View, especially if you would like your dollar to count double, which it will right now for the next hour. 757-889-9476.
And I hear the phones ringing in the background, and we appreciate that. But there are lines open now to get your call in. So do it now so that you can listen to Barbara and Another View. 889-9476 or 1-800-940-7170. We've got, as they say, volunteers standing by. And remember, when you're contributing, you're supporting shows like this that you can't find anywhere else on the dial. Is it still a dial? Do you still call it a dial?
Or anywhere else on the spectrum. How about that?
Anywhere else.
But
you're not going to find it. And this is thoughtful, thought-provoking, interesting conversation that you can't get anywhere else.
Thank you, Dan, for that. And I also want to appeal to all of you who I see out and about in the community, and you're always telling me how much you enjoy Another View. And I love it when you guys can quote chapter and verse what we've talked about on the air and so forth. So support us, help us to maintain and to be able to stay on the air, because your gifts of support are what pay for this program as well as all of the other programs that we bring you here on WHRV FM. So please, 889-9476. That's the phone number to call, and tell them that you're calling in support of Another View.
And here's the really awesome thing if you make that pledge right now. Anytime you do run into Barb Ham-Lee out there, because she is in the community, she's everywhere. She's everywhere in the community. You're not going to have to do, I think, aren't you, Dan, the one that talked about the shuffle that you make when you're not a member? You know, you say, oh, wow, Barbara, I love your show, and blah, 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 blah. And then Barbara says, well, you're a member, right?
Yep.
and then the shuffle.
Look at the time. I got to run. Thanks, Barbara.
You'll be set because you'll be able to say, well, yes, as a matter of fact, Barbara Hamley, I made my pledge during your winter membership drive. And you can say thank you, and everybody's happy. So make the pledge now, 757-889-9476. We've already raised $100 just since we've been talking. So
that's great.
That's counting double. We've got a $2,000 pot we're trying to access, but we need to raise $2,000 in order to get to it.
And remember, the opposite of that shuffle is how straight and tall you stand, how proud you are to be a member, to be a part of something bigger.
Yes.
To know that when you're listening to a show like this, you had something to do with it. So call now, be a part of this movement, 889-9476.
And we're about to take you back to what it is that you're paying for. Great programming, great conversations with the great Barbara Hamley and the great Another View. 757-889-9476, the number to call. You can also pledge online at WHRV.org. Dollar for dollar match happening right now. Let us hear from you.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. Thank you to everyone who has called in to make your pledge of support for Another View. Today is the last day of our pledge drive, and Another View listeners, it's time to support what you love. We have a $2,000 challenge, which means if you call now to 889-9476, your pledge will be matched dollar for dollar up to $2,000. Your contribution to WHRV-FM means that we can continue to bring you Another View and all the other great programming you hear on WHRV. So dig deep during this season of giving and call us now at 889-9476 and tell the volunteers that you just love Another View. Lisa and Victor and I so appreciate it. So bullying, name calling, negative tweets, terrorist activities, neighbors not speaking to neighbors. What is going on in our society? Why does it feel like hatred and bigotry are the norm instead of love and compassion? Where is our humanity? We are excited to welcome to Another View Ms. Adina Brown, author of Make Humanity Great Again. Adina has experienced the negativity and decided to do something about it. And she says, guess what? We can too. How you doing, Adina? Welcome to Another View.
I'm well. How are you?
Great. I'm just fine. So talk to me about what has happened in your life that made you say, I need to sit down and write this book to help people to learn to be humane again, to bring back the civility.
Well, where can I begin? Since the time I was born, my father's an immigrant. He's from Ghana, West Africa. I experienced some of the things he experienced, even though I didn't speak the way he did. But I would see how people treated him when we went out. We could go to a store, Macy's, wherever. Mm-hmm. His accent is very, very thick. So I could experience those things with him, even though I didn't understand.
What would people say?
People would be just really abrasive, and they'd say things like, why are you talking like that? Or I don't understand you. They'd dismiss him. And I love my father, very smart man. Obviously, I'm a little partial, but very smart and intelligent man. But because of his accent, he was often marginalized. I heard different things that he experienced at work as well. So I know that's something he experienced. And then obviously as I get older, I'm African American, definitely, literally.
Literally African American.
Literally African and American. But when I would go out into the world, I was surprised that even as a young girl, people would call me, racial slurs. It happened a lot. So.
And you grew up in the Northeast?
I did. I spent some time in different parts of the country, but mostly I stayed in the Northeast. I did, as I might have said before, I've been in Virginia. I lived in this area, but I also experienced things around the world. I've been to Arizona, California. Mm-hmm. But my surprise has always been that as much as people think that the Northeast is liberal, it really doesn't stop there. There's no part of this country, and I dare to say a part of this world, where we are untouched by racism, bigotry, harassment, and even being a woman. There seems to be no part of this world where you're safe from that. And that's unfortunate.
So do you think that it is because of the climate that, or are we feeling it more because of the political climate and the geopolitical climate of today, or do you think it's just been there all along, and because of the internet and social media and so forth, that it just seems to be so in our face at this point?
I think it's both. I definitely believe that we just have more access to it now. We are able to see 24/7 a news cycle that really thrives off of getting us afraid. So I think that's definitely a part of it. We're just able to see it faster and also see it more often. But I definitely feel like as human beings, the unfortunate side to being so intelligent is also having the ability to think negatively in a bad direction, also, be thinking something very negative and going in a very far direction with that. But then also positively, we can think in a very far uplifting direction in that way. It's just challenging to get people to stay in the positive. I think that's what happens. And so often people can influence us either way because we can think. We're not just robots. We can't just go along with whatever one person says. We're given the ability to look at Fox News, CNN, and then we can make decisions from there. And like you said, I do believe that our ability to see more right now is making it worse.
You talked about fear.
Yeah.
How does fear play into the lack of humility and the lack of humaneness?
Well, I've seen so often that people won't speak up. I think we could see, and to touch on it just for a second, with the election in Alabama, we can see that people finally realize that, we do have power. But there's been family members that I've spoken to, friends who really don't want to get involved with things because of fear. They don't want to be retaliated against at their jobs or even in society. I mean, socially, if all of your friends are racist and you're not, you're going to experience some backlash for speaking up. And I've seen that happen to people. We experience that as children on the playground. If there's someone who's popular, most of the people aren't going to go against that popular person, even if they're doing something that's wrong.
And even if it's something that they know that's wrong.
Right.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, we get older and you would think that would stop, and it doesn't. So, yeah, that's a really, again, an unfortunate side effect of being intelligent. We can make decisions. We're not just, these biological creatures that can just go in one direction. We're not just flying south for the winter. We can go north, south, east, or west,
So we can do it on our own, and we have
Right.
to make sure that we make those decisions.
Yeah.
So how do we then, because I've heard a lot of people say, I'm afraid, as you said, to speak up. I don't want to make people mad at me.
Yes.
I don't want people to, or I don't want to make a mistake and say something that would be offensive to someone else. So how do we get past that so that we can start talking to each other again?
Well, it takes a lot of guts. I was not born that way. I was often teased for being very scared and shy, and something just clicked for me. And it's something I talk about in this book. There comes a point in time when you realize that keeping silent will often, cause you to internally combust at some point, especially if you have a heart. I mean, if you're a sociopath, it might not affect you so much. But for the average person, if you see someone fall down, if you see someone get hurt and you don't speak up, it's going to kind of, do something. Yeah, it's going to do something to your insides there. And one of the things I learned, especially for myself, is that I suffer consequences later for how I will look at myself later, but also how will my children look at me? How will my family members look at me? How will society look at me? Because another thing that comes with being silent is you teach people how to treat you. So if you get into an experience where there is definitely a need to speak up, whether it's on behalf of yourself or someone else, and you don't, you are now telling that person who's inflicting pain or some type of embarrassment or shame, you're telling that person that it's okay to do it.
Because you didn't speak up.
Because you didn't say anything. And that's one of the biggest things and one of the biggest lessons for me that got repeated, unfortunately. But it's one of the biggest lessons I learned that changed me around. And now I won't say I'm totally fearless. I'm not going to go attack a bear. But it has definitely made me a more fearless person.
Can you talk about your experience,
Absolutely.
that experience that turned you around? What happened?
I mean, can't go into too many details, but there's been experiences where I've been, even with me getting involved in more community-based organizations where I live, there is definitely a hierarchy. I've seen racism. I've seen and heard things negatively spoken about, not only, people of color, but people of different religions, right? Muslim people. And I've spoken up against it. Not popular. And oddly enough, to me, no one else had. They'd come to me later and say, oh, well, that's really great that you did that. But I've definitely gotten shunned by people because of it. I've definitely had people pretend they didn't see me in the room because I've spoken up against things that I saw that were disparaging, or, just sometimes you see things that are unequal, some things that are uneven. And you look at how people say they want to run an organization or how they want to do things, and then their actions speak differently. So I've definitely spoken up against it. Not always abrasively either. I think that I'm finding a balance with how I say things, but even still, I think for most of us, we're taught, pretend you don't see it.
So and do they brand you then as a troublemaker more
Probably.
so than helpful?
I would
because
think
you would
so.
speak up.
Yeah, some people though. I think there's a lot of other people, like I said, who will come to me in private moments and say, "Hey, wow, like I agree with you. That person wasn't right," or "Oh, I saw that too." But it's unfortunate that maybe I'm that only one voice who says something. And I do understand the fear. And that's why, in the book, I talk about the cautionary tales of not speaking up. One thing I talk about is with my parents. We had a tenant. My father owned a home that had a tenant dwelling upstairs. And this woman was physically assaulted. It was very clear that was going on. And my father didn't have to say anything. I mean, he could have just left it as it was, but he spoke up. Now, to this day, I don't know what happened to this woman. I don't know if she still ended up with the person, but my father could have just collected her rent, not had said anything, because it really wasn't his issue. But he did speak up, and it could have harmed us in some way, his children and his wife, but he spoke up and he said something to her. It was, of course, her decision whether or not to stay, and eventually she moved. But I think even in that case, there's a fear of, will I lose money? He could have lost money from a tenant. There's a fear of, will I lose my job? And I think even now with all these sexual harassment allegations going on, we see people after 20, 30 years coming out. But what have they lost in all that time, And some people did speak out and then they got blackballed, or blacklisted. So it's tough. But I think we're moving into an era where it's becoming a better thing to be a whistleblower. Yeah.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about bringing back civility. We're talking about speaking up and not being afraid to call people on their bigotry, on their racism. And I'm wondering what your experience is with this. Give us a call, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So we have a question from Facebook. Are you concerned about being labeled the angry black woman because
Always.
you speak up?
Always. Do you know, I think about that every day. I think one of the reasons why I am in the space I'm in, and, on a smaller scale, is because I think I have the ability to make people comfortable. But also, there is still that fire within me. I still am who I am, and I still speak up. And I think it shocks people. And it is, I don't want to say it's a fear, but it is definitely a concern at times because it's polarizing. If you speak up as a black woman especially, you do get labeled as the angry black woman or being a troublemaker. I had someone tell me recently to stop calling myself a troublemaker because I was like, oh, I'm such a troublemaker. And she said, you know what? If you were a man, you would be called on top of things or, a go-getter, relabel that. And that's something I try to do now because, I think as black women, that's going to happen and we got to look past it.
And, in the book, though, you talk about our ability to embrace the world. I mean, everybody. This is not necessarily just black and white for you. Explain that.
Right. To me, it's not just about America and the title obviously is a play on a phrase, but I think it's really important for us to make humanity great again. It's not just about America. And obviously some people feel like America was greater when it was all white men running the show.
As a matter of fact, Roy Moore made his comments about the greatest time was when we were in slavery.
I know.
So
something else. But, I want us to focus on the world. There are so many things going on all over the world right now, and always have been, by the way. This is nothing new. But I think we need to focus on that. We are growing in knowledge and understanding. And again, there's a downside to having access to a whole bunch of different news media, but also the upside is we can see what's going on. We can see when other people are hurting. We can see wars and destruction and slavery going on other places. So let's do something about that too. Let's not just say it's sad and go on with our grocery shopping.
And we're going to talk about what we can do. But we've got a phone call, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Now, these numbers I'm giving out just for you all who may be a little concerned. All this is to call in to talk to the show. This is not about pledging. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Edwin joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Edwin. You're on the air.
Barbara, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Hello.
I'm doing the show. Hi.
Hi.
I just really wanted to say that pretty much is that I have seen, I'm a product of, I was born in 69, and I've seen how society has made, especially for social media, has made it very, very mean. I mean, you can see a baby hearing a voice for the first time, and then people saying that, well, they don't like it. And because they're behind the scenes, I think it's very subconscious that people are beginning they don't have the social redeeming value that I know my parents instilled in me. And like your guest has said, is sometimes you do have to stand up. My father always said, no one's opinion doesn't have to make it become your reality. You should not yield to certain things. Bullying does not exist unless you make it exist. So I really do feel in this society, especially as African American now, we have to take more responsibility, own our actions, and instill that in our kids to let them know, hey, we are special, and also too to let people know that we will not yield. And that's one thing I just wanted to say.
Thanks, Edwin, for the call. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Your response to it?
Yeah, I agree with him. But again, I think every generation feels like the generation after them is, definitely going in the wrong direction. I think that's always been the case, right?
Well, but when he brings up the point about children, because it concerns me that we hope that our kids learn to get along much better than our generation did, et cetera, for generations in the past. But at the same time, when you see small kids bullying each other, when you see small kids making conversations or calling other kids names that had to come from an adult because they're not children's words, what can we do to try to turn that around? I mean, people get upset if you say something to their child, but at the same time, we have to set some examples somewhere, because if they're not getting it at home, they need to get it someplace else.
I totally agree with that. I actually have worked on this in my community because, and I write about this in the book too, my community is really diverse, but I noticed that we do have a lot of Trump supporters. I've heard things being said by children, racial slurs against Jewish people, Black people, and it's upsetting. My goal would be personally where I live, but I would also recommend this for everyone else. Go to your school board, go to your principal, and don't let up. Let them know that there needs to be some type of discipline for children that behave a certain way, or especially if they use certain language, whether it be profanity, whatever the case may be. I think that education is a business, and it's the truth. And so, medicine it's all a business. And once you let them know that their services are not, fitting a certain standard, they're going to improve. You just have to make sure you kind of go out there, and not just one person, but, you get your friends, get community members who might be concerned about the same things. But I think that's how we can start so kids don't experience it at school. And of course, on the home front, we cannot stop parents from saying what they say around their children. But to me, that's one thing that I would like to get done in my community, is letting people know, there's going to be some consequence for allowing your child to talk that way. And I know it sounds like a small step, but it really will make the difference between whether or not a parent will speak a certain way in front of their child if they know their child's going to be suspended or expelled for certain type of behavior.
And if that child comes to visit your child,
Right.
Within your environment, you can also use that as a teachable moment.
Right. Definitely. I mean, I do that all the time. I'm probably like the crazy psycho mom. But I mean, I do not allow children who are disrespectful, either whether it be to me or even to my children. I don't allow that at my house and or in our presence. I feel like, we're all here to uplift each other and upbuild each other. When we're not doing that, and I'm not a person who cuts people off very easily, but you have to leave distance. And you teach your kids the same thing. You teach them to respect other people and be kind and be fair, but also to separate themselves if they don't see that happening. So it also doesn't become a part of who they are, Yeah.
You devote a lot of time to talking about women supporting women.
Oh, yeah.
Is that so? You see that as an issue? What immediately comes to mind is the back and forth this week between Robin Roberts and Omarosa and Manigault, and but that's just one example of many examples of women who seem not to be able to get along. Is there a dichotomy there? Because on the one hand, you've got this whole Me Too movement, and all these women seem to be coming together to stand together, but yet you also have this back and forth in terms of women not being very supportive of each other.
Right.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how quickly this is going to really improve, but I will say again, I do see some change. I definitely see a shift. What I do know is that as human beings, we relate better to people that look like us. So unfortunately, there's going to be, groups of white women that just can't relate to black women and vice versa, or Indian or what have you. But what I see in social media happening now, which is very comforting and also bringing me much hope, is communities of just women, whether it be, the secret Facebook group for Hillary Clinton or some other groups that I'm a part of personally. And we're trying to make sure that we're allies, for each other, not only in the space of racism and being able to speak up for each other in that way, but also as far as just being women, And I do see a shift. I see a lot more communities of women helping women. I've been seeing a lot of conventions and conferences coming up that are women supporting women, and I think it's really beautiful. I think we're learning, I think when we see that we are all having these common experiences, whether they're negative or positive, I think that's what's bringing us together. So I think it's going to improve. But me personally, fan of like women helping women. Always, definitely.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call. Matt joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Matt. You're on the air.
Hi, Matt.
Hi there. I'm enjoying your conversation, and I just want to add that while I completely agree with all views against bullying and workplace tyrannies and so forth, the biggest problem, I think, is that when one speaks truth to power, whatever one's color, whatever one's ethnicity, there's always a backlash. And I think the single biggest problem is that when people do speak up, they're usually a group of one, and that one needs an awful lot of support. And when it's a larger group, then it's much harder to get rid of the, quote, troublemaker, because it becomes apparent that it's not a troublemaker. It's a problem in the environment, whether it's the workspace, the school, or whatever. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt, for that call. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So he's saying we need to not only let that one person be out there on their own, but instead of coming to them, as you have said before, and saying, oh, I agree with you, kind of to the side,
Right.
Speak up in that moment.
Well, this is psychological. So, and I study humans a lot. I look at how humans interact, and you always have to give people a motivation for why they should come forward with something. In terms of something happening in a workplace or any type of social environment, I think it's always best to get people's buy-in in whatever way possible. You want to talk to people from a place of where they may also be affected. So if this happens at work, it might be hard to find more than one person who's willing to speak up. But if you are able to silently gather maybe three, or you kind of talk, and I think that's what's happened in some of these sexual harassment cases, right? So people have found people who have the similar situation happen to them, and they kind of latch on to each other. Yeah. And I think we have to be able to find those allies at work too. And again, in any social situation. And it happens. I mean, I have seen it firsthand for myself and also for other people. And then, of course, there's time to make an exit, right? You have to know when to fold them. If the place is just...
Pick and choose your battles.
Right. And if you are the lone wolf and there are, or maybe the lone rabbit, there's a whole bunch of angry wolves, it might be best to exit, So it's challenging to know when that point is, I think. But, you definitely look around. You see if you do have allies. Always do it in a discreet way, obviously, because unfortunately the opposition, which might be your boss or company, will be looking for people to go against you if you're speaking up against a company, because they also have, something to gain, if they get rid of you, as opposed to keep you on, or keep rather. They have something to keep. So yeah, I would suggest in those situations, but I've been there before. I totally understand it. Yeah.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with author Adina Brown, who wrote the book Make Humanity Great Again. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some very specific things that we can do in order to start this conversation and to make people human again. But right now, we're going to take a short break and go over to Pledge Central to see how we're doing with our $2,000 match. How are we doing, guys?
Well, pretty well, Barbara. Actually, we've raised so far $1,310.
Yay!
So I'll let Dan do the math, but less than $1,000 to go here, and we need a couple more calls to get that $2,000 pot of cash sitting in the back of the room that we cannot access unless we raise $2,000. So 757-889-9476 is how you can make a pledge for another view. You can also do it online at WHRV.org. The pings you've been hearing in the background, that's where those come from, people making their pledges online. Dan Cawley's with me today.
Hello.
How you doing, Dan?
There's a great way to feel human again, and that's by becoming a member of WHRV.
It's probably on her list of things when they go over.
Was that a good transition, Barbara?
Yeah.
That was a great transition. That was great, Dan.
we were listening intently to the conversation.
We were, because Dan and I are sitting here trying to figure out how to talk to each other, and we're lost. We don't know what to do.
And what was fascinating was, while we were listening, we were talking, and debating and discussing, and that's what's great about WHRV. That's what's great about your show and this whole station. And I'm a volunteer. I'm a member. I'm here volunteering. No one told me there'd be math, by the way, but I'm here to volunteer because I support the program. And it occurred to me, one of the reasons I do is because of the way it makes me think, and because of the conversations it sparks, and because of that kind of one step up intelligence of this radio station that you don't find anywhere else. So, I'm talking to you out there, the listeners. If you want to be a part of this and you want to make sure that this programming is still here, call now. Support this show. Support this station. And remember, we have a challenge. If we just get a couple more pledges, we can get that $2,000 match right now and squeeze every dollar out of it we can. So call now, 889-9476. Make these phones ring, or go online to WHRV.org. Point, click, and contribute. Make this little anonymous dinger here ding, and tell us that you support this programming.
Absolutely. And call right now, because I really want you all to hear the things that we can each do as individuals in order to bring civility back again.
And not miss anything.
So if you call while we're chatting about the pledge drive, this is now the time and a great time to call 889-9476. Help us to surpass our $2,000 challenge and be able to keep Another View and other shows on the air. And we appreciate all of you who've already called in, and we're waiting for the rest of you, so call in now.
Barbara, you got a couple of brand new members you brought into the family here.
Fantastic.
They're all giving shouts out to you. Tonya Fields of Chesapeake says thank Barbara Lee for the program. Leonard Parson is a brand new member from Virginia Beach.
Oh, Leonard, thank you.
Who says thank you and loves Another View. So brand new members of the public radio family here.
That's fantastic.
Who are going to be listening now as members. Thank you and welcome to the family.
We love new members. We love all members, but we really love new members who are coming in to the family. So please give us a call, 889-9476.
We've got about 2 minutes left in this break. That's 2 minutes, and we've still got about 4 more operators who do not have calls. So call now, become a member, support Another View, support WHRV, support smart radio. You can listen to music anywhere. This is the music, this is the station that makes you think. This is the station that sparks conversation. This is the station where later in the day you're going to talk about what you've heard and hopefully put it into practice. So call now and support this program. You know, Barbara, I always think of it like this. There's restaurants that you see, or stores that you see, that you walk by, and all of a sudden they close, and you say, "Wow, that was a wonderful place. Why is that closed?" And then you realize it's because you didn't shop there. You loved it,
exactly.
but you didn't shop there. Well, you know, let's not let that happen to our favorite programming like this show. Call now and be a part of it, and make sure it's there tomorrow and on next Friday when you need it. 889-9476, 1-800-940-7170, or point, click, and contribute at WHRV.org.
And we're going to be taking you back to what it is you're paying for, the great programming, the great conversation that you can count on every Friday afternoon on Another View. If this is where you find yourself on Fridays, I hope that you will own a little piece of what you're listening to.
Thank you for that
Step
call.
up and be a member, like those brand new members we just welcomed to the family. They are now members, and they own a little piece of Another View. You can too. 757-889-9476, WHRV.org. Pet Pledge Friday, the final hours of our winter membership drive. Let us hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. And welcome back to Another View. If you're just joining us, we're talking with author Adina Brown, who wrote the book Make Humanity Great Again. So we've got some phone calls. Let's talk to Jane in Williamsburg. Hi, Jane. You're on the air.
Oh, thanks, Barbara. Thanks for your show. I listen to it all the time.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, when I heard your guest say that she's labeled an angry black woman, I just wanted her to know that some of us are angry white women because we also would like for humanity to be great again. And I was telling your person that answered the phone the story that I have a good friend from Jamaica, and I had joined a women's club, asked her to join, she did, and we were scheduled to go to an event, and suddenly she said to my husband, "I don't want to be a token." And I had said to her, you know, it's too white in this group. You know, I need you to come and be in this group with me. And it broke my heart to hear her say she didn't want to be a token, because I've never had to feel that way.
Yeah.
And I hated that she had to feel that way. And she ended up going, and, you know, thank God we can talk about things like that. And she had a good time. But so I'm really looking forward to hearing some concrete suggestions for not overstepping my bounds, not being an activist who's going to use somebody, you know what I'm saying, to make a point, you know, because I do want humanity to be great again.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you. We appreciate the call. So, I mean, Jane, you could hear the emotion in her voice. I mean, that she really wants to make this world a better place and for all of us to be able to get along together. So what can she do so that her friend, you know, I think she did the right thing, first of all, by encouraging her friend to still come. And although I understand the friend's perspective, too, because sometimes when you are an only, you know, it becomes difficult to...
Yeah. I could sense the emotion too. Yeah. Jane, I'm sure she's still listening. What I'd like to say is, first of all, thank you for speaking up, because it's important, it's necessary, and I'm really grateful for that. And I think what you're doing is great. So keep up the good work, but also influence other people to do the same thing. But what I'd also like to say to you is, you know, I think we don't have to be angry when we're speaking up against things that aren't right. And you also can still be encouraging to your friend, but you have to give her some time too. In our community, unfortunately, there's a little bit of distrust. We've gone through a lot of things, you know, historically, that would leave a lot of Black people in a place of distrust. I was having a very heated discussion with one of my friend's husbands the other night. He really didn't understand some of the things that he was saying were really, really offensive. Now, I've been over their home numbers of times, like, you know, I've known them for years. And I don't think that sometimes, we can have friends of different races, but I don't think we always understand how they feel inside. So give your friend a moment, but also just really express to her that you really genuinely care. Even if tears come out when you're saying it, let her know how genuine you are and you're caring for her, but also you're caring of making this world a better place. And I think that will eventually come through. But, give it some time. I often hear people of different cultures and backgrounds say this, that, Black people can sometimes feel, a little standoffish or, but give us time. I'm a pretty warm, friendly one. If you meet me, you'll be fine. But we're all the same. I think what happens is some of us just are more fearful to trust. And I think that comes along with the human condition.
I think you're right. Let's talk to David in Hampton. Hi, David. You're on the air.
How you doing, Bob? I love the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to stress on as far as the workplace. I ran into a couple of incidences that were racism. I found to be looked upon as far as less angry as having more knowledge. Take notes. Document the situation, take it to HR, and each time that it happens, make sure that there's someone in the room when you're talking to the CFO or the CEO of the company. If it keeps continuing, document the notes, the times, and the dates. I find that they look at me less as an angry person, but more as a smart person, and then they become less aggressive towards me as far as, well, you need to stop worrying about this, we'll take care of it. Because then I'll say, well, I'm going to write a letter to the owner. Then they turn around and say, okay, we're going to take care of it. We'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. But see, when you do these things, you can protect yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And my whole point is this, because later down the line, if something happens, you'll have documentation. You'll also have proof that you tried to talk to your people from the upper part of the company. And if you have to take legal action, they'll be a lot less aggressive towards you as far as trying to find a way to fire you or saying that you're a troublemaker. What they'll look is, well, this person knows what they're talking about. We better watch what we do and say. At the same time, if we try to get rid of him, he's going to take legal action because he has proof, and we took the proof. And I'll take it off there on that one.
Okay, David, thank you so much for your call.
Yeah. Good point. Thanks for bringing that up, David. So I would agree with you. Document everything. And if it does come down to you getting terminated, then you definitely have that proof. It might have to go to court. But, again, try to get as many allies as you can in your corner. But, really smart move. Always document what's going on. Write it down, the date in which things are happening, what's said, and who was in the room at the time.
So let me ask you a question. If someone decides that they want to be brave, they want to speak up, or they want to connect with someone who is different from them, and they say something that is offensive, and they don't, and it's not intentional. You were talking about your friend, your friend's husband. How should we handle that in a humane way, so that we don't destroy the tenuousness that's already there, but actually help each person to come together even more?
We have to be a little slow in what we say. I've seen this happen.
Give an example.
So even in Facebook groups, I see, as much as we want to uplift Black people, you also don't want to alienate other people, right? So I think what we have to do is also be slow in teaching things and saying things in response, and also just say very candidly, that's kind of hurtful or offensive, and here's why. And I think we need to be able to do that instead of just saying, hey, that's awful, and just cutting the person down.
Here's why.
Right,
that's what's important.
Yes. You always have to say the why, and the person might not understand you, but you explain it the best way you can and just remain calm. And I don't really see that happening that much. And I can't say that I'm not guilty of not being calm myself, but I say that knowing that it really is the best way to handle it, honestly. Yeah.
So tell us some other things that we can do. You talked about groups in your neighborhood coming together as an example.
Yeah. So in my, immediate neighborhood, there's not too many, and I'd like to work on that. But externally, like in other parts of where I live, I definitely see more communities and groups coming together to unite people of all races, but who have that same one goal, which is to make more diversity a beautiful thing and make sure people are all included. So I see a lot of those things popping up. And where you live now, and I would really encourage everyone to do this, if that doesn't exist, create it. If there is something like that exists, then by all means, get on board with them and then pull more people into that group, because we want to get more like-minded, progressive, kind, and humane and civil people together as much as possible, because, you know, we don't know what direction we're going to go in. And let's be clear, the opposition is doing that themselves. So they're definitely pulling people together to fight against those who want to fight against racism. So let's make sure we get groups together of people who are like-minded. Yeah.
And what else can we do?
Another thing we can do is, you know, not just read about things and see it, but you have to really find a place in this world where you can make a difference. Even if it's being a teacher that cares for people in urban areas or in a community that's, you know, not been cared for before. You know, you be the person there. You be the change that you want to see. That's one of the reasons why I've decided to get more involved in my community. Make sure that you find whatever gifts and talents you have to make a difference in your corner of the world, or if you can travel somewhere else. I talk about this in the book. If you have the ability to go to another country and help, go. You know, abandon ship and go, you know, and, you know, I think there's more likelihood of succeeding in that now too. You know, people can telecommute. You can work in another country, you know, and still work in the U.S., but also help children there. You can help build schools. The resources that are needed here are going to stretch a lot farther somewhere else, you know? So make yourself actually physically visible in places too. You know, just sending a check someplace is really wonderful and great and helps causes. But if you can go somewhere and volunteer once a year, do it. You know, I really encourage people to do that. Help train teachers. You know, there's a lot of teachers who are overworked and underpaid. Teach them to have patience with their students, especially students of different backgrounds. There's so many ways you can help to move the needle on all these issues. You know, just pick one and look at my book because it has some, and I'll make sure to include them also on social media as well.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's go to Crystal in Chesapeake. Hi, Crystal. You're on the air.
Hi, I am so excited to be on the air today. I'm enjoying the show.
Thank you.
And it's so refreshing to hear people who are speaking up for right, and even if it's against their own selves. You know, God tells us to speak out, even if it's against your own self. But when you turn on the news, you see people supporting wrong, even if it's against their own best interest, which makes no sense. And so I say, if you're going to be a troublemaker, whatever you want to call it, keep doing what you're doing, because you're among the best troublemakers, the prophets of God, and civil rights leaders. They call them troublemakers as well. So I thank you, and you got me fired up. Oh, good. And keep firing people up.
All right. That's what I want to do,
Thank
Crystal.
you, Crystal. We appreciate that.
All right. Makes me happy.
So we should get involved in our communities. We should get involved. Should we get involved politically?
I say so. I definitely say so, because the more civil-minded people, you know, people who really care about other people are empowered, the better off our world is. Not only obviously our nation, but our world. Because if we are able to be peaceful here, we can spread that out, you know, and I'm a firm believer in that. You know, we have to have ourselves in positions of power. And I write about that in the book too. And I unintentionally have made myself in those places somehow. I wasn't immediately what I wanted to do, but, you know, we have to do that. You know, whether, again, being a judge, being a police officer, a principal of a school, when you're in a place of power, when you see something happen that's wrong, you now can act. Whereas if there's someone in that place of power that is not going to act, or they go with the wrong direction and they're going in that wrong direction, nothing's going to change. You know, if bullying is going on in a school, racial slurs are being spoken, and the principal doesn't care, or he's unfortunately racist himself, nothing's going to happen. You know, kids are still going to be mistreated. And I've seen that too. You know, I'm a person who speaks up. They know me in that school, let me tell you. But, you know, but you have to get more people in those positions that really do care about the students. They care about the community if they're a police officer. So please, yes, get in those positions right away.
Carl joins us from Hampton. Hi, Carl. You're in the air.
Thanks for taking my call, Barbara.
Absolutely.
Program as usual.
Thank you.
Just a question and pigtailing on the previous speaker. You know, there was a time when communities tended to stick together. They don't now. and it's not just blacks, it's all immigrants are attacked for being, in quotes, different. Have you ever thought of making this program a kind of an introduction to that? Asking those of us who listen to volunteer our time and then going out into the community as invited.
Oh, that's a good thought, Carl. We'll take a look at that.
All right. I like that. Carl, you're on top of it. I like that. Yeah. Sounds like a good idea. Tell us when you're leading it.
Well, but you bring up a very good point, because people say all the time, they throw out an idea or they say, well, but you should do it.
Yeah, that's
How
true.
what do we need to do internally to make ourselves say, we're going to step up and be the one?
Yeah, for some, I do talk about this too. For some people, it's natural to be a leader. And I know for many of us, it is not. You slowly build on this concept. And I talk about this in relation to, again, the fear. You slowly build on, just squashing those fears little by little. So if you're afraid to speak up, you find these little ways in daily life. Hey, my coffee is too cold, or, my food isn't warm, whatever you want to do. And those little pathways are going to etch into your brain this ability to speak up in bigger situations. But you got to take it step by step. And also when joining groups, maybe you join a group that works for change, works for, positive goals in the community, but maybe you don't speak up right away. You sit in the back row the first time. Then you come in next time, you talk to a few people. Then you come in, hey, do you need my help? What can I do? So you just pace yourself. And I think that's where most people should start. Yeah.
If you live in a predominantly African-American community, for example, and you don't have a lot of access to other cultures, other communities, where do you look and how do you get yourself out of your community and to these other groups so that you can start to interact?
I've looked at that before, actually, because I always question, why do some people become successful or leave their neighborhoods or move on into a different realm? What makes them do that if that's never been an example in their world, right? How they do this is you tap into different programs that are there. I know, for instance, in the Northeast, there's different programs like Jobs for America's graduates, or there's the Peace Corps. There's all these different groups that are going to kind of put you around different, not only different nationalities of people, but also people that might be able to give you a hand up. So even in urban areas, I've noticed there are a lot more programs coming in that are geared toward getting students either a different type of education, some exposure to the arts. Make sure if you're a parent, you put your children in those, even if it's a lottery, put them in it, just so they can possibly get picked for it. If there's a special after school program or a STEM program that pops up, put them in that program, and hopefully their interaction with other educators will really help to change their perspective and get them in a different direction.
And
too.
it also helps them to interact with other kids and their age and become more comfortable.
Yeah, there's usually some type of competitions that happen or some type of meets that they have, and they'll have exposure to other students. Yeah.
And and if your neighbor doesn't speak to you, or you've had, you just kind of go and you kind of wave, but they're of a different nationality or a different race, and you guys may wave at each other, but you've never had a real conversation. What do you do?
I've had this one too, so many times. I've sent Christmas cards to people and they didn't even wave at me. Cookies, I think I gave cookies one year. My word. But with that, sometimes you're going to force people a little bit, be a little salesy. So you might see the person taking their trash out, or maybe they're going to the mailbox. You go, hey, how you doing? I don't think we've ever met. You strike up a
You really have to be the one to put yourself out there.
Yeah. And not everyone's willing to do that, but yeah, you might have to do that, And I think, again, we have these commonalities. That's so strange to me that we could ever think that we're so divided. We have so many commonalities. And you just try to bring up something. Be observant. Maybe they got a new car, maybe they keep their grass really nice. Say something to them like, I really like your grass. Look at my grass. It's brown. I really like how yours looks, those are the things that you can do to spark an interest in the person. And unfortunately, but we know as humans, we're a little into ourselves. So you start talking to that person and let them talk about themselves. Whew, you got a best friend.
They'll go for it.
They'll go for it. Usually. Yep. Yeah.
Do you have hope that things will change and that people actually one day will actually get along?
I do. I really do. I went to see Angela Davis in New York, maybe like a couple months ago, and I was really saddened because someone did ask her that question. Do you have hope that things are going to change, or do you think there needs to be a revolution? What do you think needs to happen? I actually am still really hopeful. I had a new friend I was walking with in the city a few weeks ago after a talk that I listened to. I heard her say that she feels like the political climate and also just society in general right now, it's almost like a spiral. So she said, you don't necessarily go straight down the ladder, but you're kind of like spiraling a little bit down, you're sliding a little down, and then you might come back up a little bit. It doesn't go just straight down and not going straight up, So there's a little, backwards motion it feels right now, but I'm still really hopeful. I have no idea why, but besides the fact that, like I said, to be fair and to be honest, I do see people waking up. I talk about this as well. I see people waking up and saying, it's not all about me. There's other people out here in this world besides me. And we can see that very easily, and I think people are really starting to take notice to that. Yeah.
So people, and the other thing is too, I think sometimes media makes it feel like it's a lot worse than it actually is on a day-to-day basis. Right. And so if we can have those one conversations at a time, things will start to turn around.
I believe so. I really do.
That is fantastic. Adina Brown, what a pleasure to talk with you. And your optimism is really encouraging, because I think that in today's world, we feel like everybody's just going to stay in their own little spot, and they're not going to interact, and they're not going to go back and forth. And you've made us feel better about that.
Okay,
where can we
good.
find your book?
You can find it right now on Amazon. Go get it. It's right there. It'll be some other places too soon, but right now it's there. You can also find me on social media if you like to, on Instagram at Adina_Brown, on Facebook, same thing, and Twitter. I'm not an avid Twitterer or tweeter, but please find me there as well if you enjoy that space, because I'm there too. So you can find me everywhere pretty much.
Fantastic.
Right.
The book is called Make Humanity Great Again, How the Boldness of Conscience Can Overcome Hate. Thank you so much for joining us here on Another View.
Thank you so much.
And we will be right back.
Hang all the mistletoe, I'm gonna get to know you better this Christmas. And as we trim the tree, how much fun it's gonna be together this Christmas. The fireside is blazing bright. We're caroling through.
Welcome back. Guess what? Thank you to all of our listeners out there. We exceeded our goal at $2,552,000. So yay, we are a happy camper. We exceeded our $2,000 match. And hopefully people have continued to call in, because that number came in actually about 10 minutes ago. So hopefully we've got an even higher goal. Thank you so very much. $2,500 is how much we have raised thus far. So we really appreciate it. And we just want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has become a member of WHRV in support of Another View. Your membership dollars are what keep us on the air. And for that, we are so grateful. Now, it's not too late to become a member. Call 889-9476 or 1-800-940-7170 and talk to our volunteers. And if you can, become a sustainer. That means you give a certain amount each month from your credit card or your checking account, and you never have to worry about your membership again. We just continue to take that amount until you tell us to stop. So on behalf of producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Victor Bowen, and we all truly appreciate your support. We hope you enjoyed today's program. You can download the podcast at anotherviewradio.org. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer, and Jordan Yowell answered our phones, and Victor Bowen is our audio engineer. We're going to take a couple weeks off for the holidays, so we want to wish all of you the happiest of holidays, and we will see you on the 29th of December. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful holiday season. And thank you so very much for listening to Another View.